I'm Ben Gonzalez with the Texas Department of Insurance, and this is the Texas Insurance Podcast. On each episode, we take a look at an insurance topic, why it might be important to you, and then offer some tips to help save you some money or protect your property. With the holiday season fast approaching, today we're talking about travel insurance. One thing a lot of us learned from the pandemic is we're going to have to be a lot more flexible with our travel plans. Travel insurance is one way to help protect your money if your plans do have to change. We spoke to Megan Cruz, the executive director of the U.S. Travel Insurance Association, about what consumers should know when choosing a travel insurance policy and who really needs one. If I'm planning a trip, how do I know that I need travel insurance?
Yeah, so in considering purchasing travel insurance, travelers might want to consider the potential out-of-pocket expenses they would have to otherwise cover in the event that something occurs. For example, if you had to cut your trip short due to your illness or that of a family member, could you afford the cost of another plane ticket? If you had to be medically evacuated or pay medical bills out of pocket, could you afford those costs? Or if your flight is delayed and you have to book a hotel room for a night, or your luggage is lost and you need to replace essentials, are those costs that you could cover out of pocket?
But I guess not every policy will cover every situation, like some of the things you mentioned. What are the most common types of policies that consumers may encounter?
Most of the travel protection products purchased are called comprehensive plans, or you might see the term trip cancellation or interruption packages. And these plans are going to include both insurance coverage and non-insurance services. So the insurance coverages can reimburse prepaid, non-reimbursable expenses like a flight, a cruise, a hotel deposit, if a trip is canceled or interrupted for a covered reason, as well as some of those other unexpected expenses like replacing items in lost luggage, an unexpected early flight home, an emergency medical bill. And then that travel protection plan can also provide access to a number of other non-insurance services, which are technically not insurance. It can provide 24-hour assistance line. It can help a traveler coordinate medical care, contact family back home if something happens, provide translation assistance, even provide security alerts and legal assistance. Another option for coverage that I'd mention is called Cancel for Any Reason coverage, or CFAR. And that allows you to cancel for any reason or for no reason. It's typically a little more expensive, and it typically reimburses less than 100%, so more like 50 to 75%. And it generally requires that you purchase your plan within a shorter window of time after booking your trip.
I guess generally the expense of your trip is kind of what guides a lot of people. The larger or more extravagant the trip, the more you might want to protect that.
I think that's a fair way to look at it, yeah.
Definitely. And what you were describing is also kind of like a combination of different products that are kind of tied together in a package, which I guess is what a lot of people would really want to have if they're looking for travel coverage. But traditionally, a lot of products that we've seen have excluded things like pandemics, like we saw. Has the market adapted with COVID? Are there policies out there that will now cover you if your plans change because of something like a viral outbreak?
You know, with respect to exclusions, while we're not aware of any policies other than those with Cancel for Any Reason coverage that would provide coverage for fear of traveling due to COVID, most policies do have a distinct section where most, if not all, of their exclusions are listed. And we always suggest that you look at the policy and the terms and conditions to understand how the coverage may apply to your own situation.
Yep, that's the same advice we give to people about all kinds of insurances. You got to know what you're purchasing.
Exactly. And, I'd also say travel insurance protects travelers from unexpected events. And those events trigger covered reasons for cancellation. Not all policies specifically exclude a pandemic, but the pandemic by itself is typically not a covered reason for the cancellation. So a covered reason could be, among other things, something like a quarantine, sickness, injury, loss of a job, being required to work, bad weather, or even a government-mandated shutdown of an airport. So policies provide coverage when an unforeseen covered event prevents or interrupts travel.
So maybe a symptom of that pandemic that maybe shuts down travel to an area would trigger that covered condition. Well, another common exclusion that we've seen in the past is that sometimes travel insurance will exclude pre-existing health conditions. So if somebody has a chronic health issue, what should they be looking for as far as text in that travel policy?
Yeah, you'll want to check with your insurance provider when purchasing because many plans do offer a chance to waive the pre-existing condition exclusion, and that is very often associated with early purchasing, so meaning close to when you book your trip to also purchase that protection plan.
Okay, so just be sure you know what you're purchasing there. Another issue we hear here at the Texas Department of Insurance is people call and ask, if I get injured or sick while I'm away from home, is my regular health insurance plan going to cover me? So is there some other kind of coverage that people may want to check on there?
Yeah, if you become ill or injured during your trip, that comprehensive travel insurance policy that we chatted about can help reimburse medical expenses. It can locate and arrange that appropriate medical care. It can arrange and pay for transportation, including emergency air ambulance evacuation if that's necessary. I'll note that while many U.S. health insurance plans cover medical expenses incurred abroad, it's important to understand what is and is not covered before you travel. And with a few exceptions, Medicare and Medicare supplements generally don't cover expenses incurred outside the U.S., so your travel insurance would become primary in that situation.
Right, so maybe domestic might be covered, but if you go international, then you might want to check the fine print on that.
Absolutely. Although, the emergency medical assistance piece is still an important element to note, even if
like
you are
said,
domestic.
that kind of that service part of the package that you're buying might be useful there. Okay, here's a big one that everybody wants to know. What should you expect to pay for travel insurance? Is there some rule of thumb or policy formula that we can use?
Sure. Travel insurance typically costs between 5 and 10% of your total trip cost. If you add the flexibility that a cancel for any reason coverage provides, that option may cost 40 to 70% more than a traditional plan, depending on the level of reimbursement you're looking for.
Yeah, and I think, to be honest with you, I think I bought travel insurance for the first time this year because everything was so different than what I remembered in the past. So I can see people looking into it more these days. If you don't buy travel insurance, though, there's still some coverage that might be available to you, depending on things you already own, like your homeowner's insurance or renters might cover a lost piece of luggage or maybe something that's stolen from a bag. But are there other things to recover losses from travel that consumers might not think about?
Yeah, other than what you mentioned, something else I'd suggest that a traveler do is to contact your travel suppliers, so your hotel and your airline, before you cancel your trip. They may allow you to change your trip without penalty, which is trending as a result of the impact on travel due to COVID. Most major airlines are currently waiving change fees for events like hurricanes, and many cruise lines are offering refunds and future cruise credits. So the advice would be, prior to filing your travel insurance claim, check with your travel suppliers to determine if any penalties or fees could be waived. And if you're able to change the dates of your trip, your travel insurance provider may also be able to change the dates of your policy to coincide with your new dates of travel. So then you don't end up needing to have to invest in a new policy as well.
Right, just to shift it over a little bit. And like you said, I think the hotels and airlines, this won't be the first time that they've had those questions, especially today. So go ahead and call and ask them.
Absolutely. We would always say, if you have questions, call the insurance company, call your travel providers, and ask those questions directly.
As Megan noted, you need to be a little more involved than just buying the first policy you find and hoping it applies to your particular circumstances. Ask questions when you're shopping for travel insurance and make sure you understand the coverage before you head out on your next journey. Well, that's it for today. We have tips about travel insurance on our website at tdi.texas.gov, and you can also call our helpline at 800-252-3439 to ask your insurance questions. And be sure to subscribe to the Texas Insurance Podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, so you don't miss out on any of this important information. We'll talk to you next time.